Hi everyone, and good morning, Trinh. It's great to see your face. It's always a delight for me to talk to you, and now that you're in this new role, I often get some good fashion advice as well. So it's great to have you with us today. Let's get started right away on the subject of Trinh. Your CV reads, a little bit like an upscale shopping mall map. Very impressive, by the way. And you've been in telecommunications, coffee, groceries, and now high quality menswear. What has driven you to this new opportunity at Harry Rosen?
Well, I mean, I've always been a learner and curious, I probably should just say hello to everybody in the audience there first. But for me, it's one of the reasons I love marketing is that there's always something new every day, and there's always so many challenges, and I love that. And it also, allows me to follow my passions. I've always been passionate about food, fashion, entertainment, technology, and I love retail. So marketing is really, to me, the best place I could be. And sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, and this job probably has some unique aspects of it that would have drawn you to it as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the reason this role at Harry Rosen was so interesting for me is that there's a very broad scope. Most CMOs, as far as CMO roles go, don't include the e-commerce pillar and sometimes don't include the creative pillar for that matter. So having all of it under one roof really allows me to impact change and to do it in a very efficient and cohesive way. So it's been great.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tell me a little bit about Harry Rosen as a brand.
Well, the brand, I mean, it's an interesting brand. We've been around for, I think we just celebrated our 66th anniversary, so almost 7 decades. And there's a lot of legacy with that. But when you get a lot of legacy, you also, go through phases. And most brands with heritage have that aspect of them. And so for us, we've always been very consistent about how we come out with our values. And those values, leadership, creativity, passion and inclusivity are values that we've always carried, and I think we're very well respected for. But at the same time, those values need to be refreshed and re-articulated with a layer of, the what's going on in the modern world right now. So that's what we've been focused on, is how do we re-articulate those values so that they are resonating with our customers.
Great, yeah. I want to go there in a few minutes. But I wanted to talk about you came into a new role, had a fresh perspective. And you're mentioning to me before that the idea for you was to do a bit of a brand refresh, and you're all gearing up to do this right before COVID hits. What was the marketing strategy? What were the problems that you're trying to solve for your brand?
Well, like most aging brands, one of our biggest issues was that we were becoming a little bit stale. And the cycle that we were in is that we had customers who had grown with us, but we weren't necessarily filling that funnel. So we weren't bringing enough new customers in, and we weren't bringing enough younger customers in. Right. And then at the same time, I think there was this challenge of, were we really articulating what our brand purpose was, and were we clear what we stand for? And so there is a whole exercise that we went through to really get to the root of all that, and really ensure we protected our heritage, but at the same time layered on, just a more fresh approach to how we articulate ourselves. Great. So
that was all ready to roll out, and COVID hits.
Well, we were gearing up. We weren't done yet. Okay. We were gearing up in March to roll it out in May. And obviously, I mean, for us, our lockdown happened on March 16th, Friday, March the 13th, out of all days, was the last day I was in the office. And that was the week that we started hearing about all the shutdowns and closures of the sports properties. And when that started happening, and you started looking at the media landscape and you looked at customer sentiment, we just knew, like, we had to pause everything. Yeah. Very clearly walking into Larry's office and saying, Larry, we've got to cancel everything. He's like, everything.
Wow. And how did that go? How did that conversation go?
Well, he has placed a lot of trust in me for I don't know what reason. He's just an amazing human being. And we had a very frank conversation about, we had a TV shoot scheduled, be all these, MPAs we had to sign, I had to sign. And I said, let's just like take a step back and be pragmatic about this. And it just didn't make any sense. So our team spent all weekend redoing all of our plans, our entire calendar that we had worked months on. And we were just, to use the word that's been out there a lot, we were just pivoting all weekend, and we came out on Monday with a fresh set of messages that were really more catered to what was going on in the world.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit of some of those messages and the changes that you had to put in place, and how it impacted media, how it impacted your mix.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were going down the path of strategically adding more of a brand layer to all of our demand and going back to kind of traditional marketing with brand and demand, because we had leaned so heavily towards more demand driving. And this was so unique because it was kind of neither here or there. It was not. It was a little bit in between. It actually had nothing to. It wasn't even. It probably had a lot to do with brand, but it really had a lot to do with safety, and just it was a completely different market challenge, right? Where it was about just protecting and ensuring people to let them know that we were protecting our people and that we were being safe and that we understood what was going on.
Great, that's good. And I've talked to a lot of other CMOs, and that has been a very wise decision for a lot of brands to make in this time. Branding becomes almost communications purely in that way. I want to talk about face masks for a moment. So one of the things I saw Harry Rosen do right away and made some noise about was just changing their part of their product set to be face masks related to that safety brand. Never in a million years would I think that a face mask would make a nice accent for a suit, like a puff or a boutonniere. But tell me how that unfolded. Did it feel like it was completely off-brand at the time to you?
To be honest, it didn't. Oddly enough, right? Because to your point, and we all said, like, who would have thought we'd all be sitting here talking about making face masks? And
right.
How it started was, obviously as a marketer, and sitting on the executive team, we followed what was going on very closely. And because our business is so tied to Milan and China in the fashion industry, in the fashion world, we were following what was going on in other parts of the world. And we were hearing over there was a PPE shortage. And then February, March timeframe here, you started hearing reports of there might be a shortage, there might be a pending shortage. And so we jumped on that right away. And I actually went to a few members of our team and said, there's going to be a shortage, like no doubt about it, right? People, that was when toilet paper and all those type of supplies were running low. And so we kind of shopped around the idea, and because our tailor shops were closed and a lot of our manufacturing suppliers were all at home, we thought there's capacity out there and there's materials out there to create these face masks. And so we thought about it and said, okay, well, what's our place in the world? We're not a medical supplies company. We're a fashion, high-end fashion brand. So how can we help? Even if it's just in a small way, how can we help?
Right.
So we came up with the idea while I was, talking about that. One of our buyers actually went to ShirtFit, who's a Canadian manufacturer. They do all of our Harry Rosen signature private label shirts. And it kind of the rest was history. They started developing these masks. I actually have one here.
Wow.
Matches my my jacket. And so they took the fabric that we had available for our shirts and created these non-medical face masks.
That's great. And what a great story, and true to the times, integrating the health message with the Harry Rosen brand. It's stylish, and I think that and making it a little more fun for people to be safe in this time. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
In terms of the communication of that, was there any discussion or concern that you were lunging and trying to be a do-gooder, trying to be perceived as a do-gooder? Like, how do you remain authentic while you're making that type of pivot and shift?
I would say if there's a few themes in 2020, and if I would say one of them is authenticity, for sure. And especially when it comes to how you come out with your brand. And we did talk about that. We did talk about, will we get criticized? You know, that saying that no good deed goes unpunished. Will that be the case? And then, you know what, we ended up deciding, we said, forget that.
Yeah.
We're just trying to do some good in the world. And if someone wants to criticize, then go ahead and criticize. But we know where we stand. We know we want to help. And we were all, like, the whole executive team was right behind it. If nobody was like, we shouldn't do this, but we're worried about this. We were like, it doesn't matter. We want to help. And so we went forward with it. And it was really all about just producing these face masks for hospitals, healthcare facilities, so a few long-term care facilities. And we didn't put one paid marketing dollar behind it. Our team just started calling hospitals. We called hospitals in different regions. Everybody at the time was in a different state in terms of their PPE drives and whether or not they were even willing to accept outside donations. And some were already, you know, kind of further ahead and had sites and microsites ready to go, and you could submit. I even got a call from the government of Ontario because we posted on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And that's all it took. And that's all it took.
That's wonderful. Great. So I love it. Authenticity, I agree with you, is absolutely critical. I mean, look at us right now. We're in our homes and we're showing the world ourselves, right? So I think that's really, really good. There's, in the midst of all this, which is, you know, I think good in the long run. We've had some other societal sea changes. Black Lives Matter, for example. I think we've all coming to this new realization during this hard time that there are systemic barriers to everyone, and we need to give everyone an equal shot at life. I think Harry Rosen, from his values you mentioned before, has something to say in this conversation. Do you agree?
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, this is such an important topic, and like, to me personally, as well as at Harry Rosen, and, you know, in a way, Black Lives Matter forced organizations to really just look at themselves and just be very honest about whether or not they were doing enough to help with, you know, just systemic racism in general. And what it did is it compelled us to evaluate, be honest, and act, for the most part. And, you know, the way we approached it, as always, is that, you know, we're not the kind of brand to jump on a bandwagon. We did our diligence. We reviewed our internal kind of inner workings, policies, hiring practices, even from a merchandising point of view. We looked at our marketing again. You know, I've always supported, obviously, D&I in general. Doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter, you know, the race, the orientation, etc. But we felt really good about certain areas, and then other areas we were like, we need to do more, right? And I think that if I had to be very honest, and I think honesty and transparency is also an important theme for 2020. And so we put a note out eventually, and I did some research around, you know, how can we help in a meaningful way? And one of the areas that we've always supported is education. As an organization, you know, we're always about giving advice and educating on, you know, how to feel confident, how to dress and put yourself together, appropriate for different occasions. And it was no different in this case, where we really wanted to make sure, you know, we were thorough and we were diligent. And, you know, we have this kind of internal saying that today's student is tomorrow's CEO.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, one of the things I like about your brand is that it's customized as individual, and it's really about personal confidence. If you spend enough time on how you look and in a way that you're comfortable, it makes you the most confident in a business environment, it's going to help you. And I think that's part of the opportunity, right, we face as a society right now, is to work on you know, just acceptance of people's individuality in a workforce, and see what value they can add. I think that's tremendous. We got a question a little bit about the business model moving forward, just came in. And, you know, I'm not making any self-declaration here today, but there have been days when my pants, let's just say, they weren't a perfect match for my shirt. You know, and so from a business model perspective, you know, the pandemic has had an impact on brands and fashion brands. And I'm just saying perhaps that phenomenon cannot be great for business. How has Harry Rosen's fared? What do you see in the future? How are you even measuring in the short run what success is?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenging time for retail apparel. I mean, it's in the news every day, and we're living it as well. Obviously, you know, suit sales are down. People aren't buying full on suits, but we're still getting through sports jackets like this one, like what you're wearing,
Yeah.
For Zoom calls and for VC calls. But the reality is that people have moved to more casual wear. I mean, in the apparel world, we call it sportswear, but more casual wear and work from home wear. So we've now created a whole new category of work from home wear.
There you go.
Which, you know, we look at it and we have set some criteria against it, you know, things that are washable and comfortable, but still presentable, et cetera. And that's just what we're, you know, we've had to pivot to. And quite frankly, it was already happening.
Right.
So it was already happening pre-COVID, and COVID just accelerated this along with many other initiatives. And I would say now, you know, where we might have sold a fewer tops to pant ratio, we're now probably more like 4 to 5 to 1 top to pant ratio. And so I won't even ask if you're even wearing any pants today, because there are days where, you know, people are probably walking around in shorts as well. So we recognize that, and we've adjusted our merchandising and our marketing as a result, just to give our customers what they're actually looking for.
That's great. And the other part of the question, sorry, I asked you too many questions all at once. Like in terms of measuring success, like what would your KPIs be these days from a marketing perspective, but as well from an overall business perspective?
Well, I mean, everyone's had to recalibrate their sales targets, like everyone. And so we've adjusted that. And we've noticed that on e-com, actually, we've over-indexed on e-commerce. So we've actually doubled down on the investment to drive e-commerce. We re-platformed our website, in fact, and have increased, you know, our digital spend. So with that, we also developed a performance marketing function. And so our KPIs are really obviously sales, customer acquisition, customer satisfaction. And then there's a whole scorecard around how we look at performance marketing. That's in evolution right now because we are testing and learning more than we ever have. So our KPIs really, you know, they're the typical ones, but at the end of the day, there's a cultural layer on top of that as well. And are we doing this all, you know, in a way that also is resulting in employee satisfaction? That's another topic that we've, you know, has surfaced up to the top of the list for us.
Yeah, and I guess one of the benefits you have being owned by having the founders, your family right in the room with you is that you can make some long-term decisions that may be helpful to the brand in the long term, but it also helpful to society in the long term. And I'm sure you're doing that's your perspective right now. Safety. So we talked about that earlier, but I'm interested in, you know, apart from safety, what's the opportunity for inspiration in these days? Because I mean, I took a plane. I had to go and travel once, and I took a plane to Toronto, and it was very clinical, the whole aspect of it. It wasn't very inspirational. I know we're in these days, but as you look forward into time, like how can you inspire people in these days?
Well, I would say all of us as brands had at one point and probably still have to communicate the functional aspects of safety, right? You know, distancing, capacity, PPE, sanitizing, all of that stuff. We even quarantine or put our product into quarantine after someone has tried it on, just as an extra measure. But those are things that are, to me, are just based on you've got to communicate them. But I think the inspiration comes from really leaning into, and no matter what your brand is, but really leaning into what aspects of your brand are true to what you stand for.
Right.
And we've always been about personalization, personalized service, a personalized experience. And so we've really leaned into that. And luckily, as I suppose for us, personalized service usually means like less people, usually means a safer, you know, more intimate environment. So it, by nature of what we do, it actually lends itself to a more one-on-one experience. So it takes away some of the anxiety around being around large crowds, and of course everyone is, you know, we, like I said earlier, take extra measures to ensure everything is extra clean. But that doesn't mean you can't have a relationship. And I think that that's the inspiration, is that don't forget that even amongst all this stuff that's happening right now, you can still have a relationship with your customers, and your brand can still have a relationship with your customers. And I think you can't lose sight of that, because then you start to stray away from what you stand for.
Wonderful. The final question I have for you today, Trinh, and thank you so much for this conversation. You know, I think we're in a little bit in the long middle, as they say. We see some hope in the future with the development of vaccines. We see the treatment methodologies are improving, and that we hope that in the middle term, at least, things get back to normal, or some new sense of normal. I'm wondering what as a CMO, brand leader of a major Canadian brand, what's your overall best advice for retail brands from this point forward as you try to navigate?
Well, most certainly I would say live your brand purpose, which is the topic of this discussion today, in everything you do. And, you know, be the advocate in your organization for what your brand purpose is, and ask lots of questions, you know, and challenge your peers and your team to ensure that you're living up to those values. You know, we, in the middle of a pandemic, also decided to go ahead and refresh and relaunch our brand. We came up with a new platform, brand platform, Set the Tone. It's out in market right now. And it's really about setting the tone for whatever your day brings you, right? And in that tagline, which we plan to invest in as a longer term platform, is this notion of purpose. So set the tone for blank, 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 right? It can be for, you know, work, could be for friendship, it could be for your family, it could be for giving back, it could be for all these things, different things in your life. But if you're going to do it, whatever you do that with your whatever purpose you know you intend for. Set yourself a purpose. So that's something I would say definitely is a do. And the other thing is, you know, I would say listen to your people, and be empathetic. I think, you know, you've heard lots more people talk about just being kind these days, but I think it's not just about being kind, it's about being empathetic. Like, what does your team need from you as a leader today? Because it changes every day, and I've been up, you know, I've gone through lots of you know, ups and downs with my team as well, because every day is so uncertain, and it's going to continue being uncertain. And as well, when I say listen to your people, I mean not just your staff, but of course your customers. Listen to your customers, and ensure you're adjusting, which is a very different model. You know, we would set our plans before, and we would go out and we would just, you know, blast our messages as marketers, and now you kind of have to stop and check in more often, frequently.
Great. I heard be authentic, lean in, listen, inspire. Thanks so much, Trinh. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you today, and I look forward to lots of future conversations with you.
Thank you, John.